Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Skift Podcast. We are coming to you from New York and Bangkok. I'm sitting in my basement in New York, and Ian is sitting at the Minor Hotel's headquarters in Bangkok. Typically, I'm not the host of the Skift Podcast, but I've known Ian for a long time, and he's been a very good supporter of Skift, personally been a friend, and I find his career fascinating because he spent a lot of time in marketing and loyalty in airlines and then moved over to hotels, and so has a more of a spectral view of the world of travel than a lot of other people in the travel industry. And he's just an upbeat, energy-filled guy. And so it's always good. I have allergies, and he says he has allergies, so we'll try and project as much as possible. Ian, welcome to the Skift Podcast.
Thanks a lot, Rafat. It's an honor for you to be hosting with me. It feels like this is long overdue.
It is long overdue. I think I last interviewed you on stage, I don't know, pre-COVID or something.
Absolutely. Abu Dhabi.
Wow. Yeah. No, I was looking at that early this morning for some reason. So Ian, you are the Global Chief Commercial Officer for Minor Hotels. Minor, for those of you who don't know, and some in US may not know, even though Minor, I'm sure pretty much everybody in the hotel industry knows, is not a minor player. It's a major player in the travel industry, started in Bangkok. How many years ago, Ian, at this point?
I mean, at this point, we're almost hitting 40, 50 years.
40, 50 years. Yeah. Bill Heineke, who built this, he was a minor when he started this. And that's why he to like do a thumb at the world.
That's why I became minor. He started when he was 17, right? He got a loan, was minor, and had to sign for it. And they obviously named the company after his status, and it's followed us through the years. And not so minor anymore. But as we like to say, minor things matter.
Yeah, you have 560 hotels? I was looking, I guess the latest count, maybe it's a little higher than that at this point.
Yeah, 560 going on 800. That's kind of the
2027. I saw the number 830 or something. That is the goal. And unlike a lot of the hotel chains, you own a lot of these properties as well.
Yeah, we do. As you know, we're we like to qualify ourselves as asset right. So we own or lease roughly 70% of our hotel base. Obviously, with time, we're looking to rebalance that a bit. Obviously, economic cycles and all the rest impacting our decision making. But yeah, that's where we've started. We fundamentally want to keep on owning hotels. It's part of our DNA. We are owners. We act like owners in pretty much all of our relationships. And so we are pretty much experts at managing the full P&L from top line all the way to the bottom line. And whether you're a managed property or an owned property, we apply the same diligence. So it's that kind of a DNA which makes Minor pretty unique.
And you have a few homegrown brands on the luxury end. You bought NH hotels out of Spain a few years ago. Was it pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Yeah, pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. And you've started NH collection as well. You also manage and own a bunch of Four Seasons, Marriott, et cetera, a bunch of different hotels. And the claim to fame recently is that the Four Seasons, where the White Lotus season 3 was filmed, is also owned by Minor. And there are two other Anantaras that was part of the filming as well.
There are actually three other Anantaras that were part of the filming. Actually, 4 if you extend it to the beach party. So yeah, quite the Minor family party, if you like.
Quite the Minor family party. This was so Bangkok had a major earthquake. Myanmar had a much bigger one as the epicenter. You and I were messaging. I was messaging you, and looks like you were all safe. What's the status in Bangkok and the rest of Thailand in terms of the post-earthquake?
Look, the status is very good. I think like media, as media like to do, they like to sensationalize these events. We all know this. We've all seen this. And so the media really focused on a very limited amount of destruction in the country, but kind of put it on replay for several days. So you saw this one building under construction, obviously in Thailand, collapse. The reality is when you actually look at the state of Bangkok within less than 24 hours, the city was back to normal. Now, not to say that people were back to normal. Obviously, an earthquake is traumatic. You can appreciate that people were shaken, and of course, we spent most of our time reassuring and bringing in counselors to help with our teams and hotels and here at headquarters. But as for the actual infrastructure, none of the core infrastructure in the country was majorly affected. Of course, within 72 hours, we had engineers inspect the integrity of every single one of our hotels, which of course all passed with flying colors. And most of the damage really is cosmetic. An earthquake is an earthquake. The standards here have been in place since 2006 or 7. And so what happens is the core of the building shakes, like in most major cities. And so what you have is you have plaster and cement cracking because, of course, the building is moving and it's designed to move. And so you have a lot of cosmetic damage. And the reality is we've almost fixed 85% of some of the cosmetic issues we've had, and our hotels are back up to 100% as of today. So frankly, we've been lucky. I think Thailand, it illustrates the building codes and I think the rigor in the country. I think it's probably a bit more difficult when you look to your neighbor in Myanmar, where obviously they have a whole other situation on their hand. It's quite difficult to enter the country. The UN has just entered the country probably a week ago to help out. It's one of those things where you can be reassured in Thailand, but you can't really be happy about it because your neighbor is undergoing some
hurting a lot.
difficult situation. So we're trying to help where we can there, where we're working with UNHCR on some relief efforts and those kind of things. But yeah, we wish all the best to Myanmar, but I think Thailand is in great shape, and I think realistically, although we've seen a bit of a dip in our bookings and cancellations, as you would expect people to do when they see this kind of an event. There's been a very rapid normalization of the situation,
and also the White Lotus effect is helping as well, which again we'll come to in a few minutes. The second thing, which is you log off in the night, get up in the morning. Turns out the whole world is upside down, which literally happened, I think, to you this morning.
Yeah.
It's morning for you, night for me here. So we saw it in the day, but you saw it overnight, or at least you probably woke up a few hours ago and saw it. On the tariffs up and down.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably a good thing because as we were talking about earlier, we both live a life of of some degree of stress. So I avoid the stresses in the U.S. during the day when it's night here, but then you wake up in the morning and you bear the full brunt of what's happening, particularly these days. And so, as you can appreciate, between April 2nd. And yesterday, we saw a significant deterioration of financial markets, loss of confidence, foreign exchange movements, you name it. And then, of course, I go to bed last night with all of this on my mind, and I wake up this morning to one of the strongest rallies since 2001. I think the NASDAQ, it was for sure the strongest rally since 2001. The Dow picked up practically 8 points or something, 7 or 9 points, whatever, something around those ranges, which is massive. I think it's probably 60-70% of the losses of the last couple of days, just because there was a messaging around the selective halting of tariffs for the next 90 days. So so as much as our job in hospitality is to try to anticipate shocks and manage them, and you kind of look at playbooks of previous recessions and slowdowns to try to predict what's going to happen next. Well, this is a playbook of pure uncertainty, right? So, we had the playbook of the global financial crisis of 2008. We had the Asian crisis. We had COVID. We had all these slowdown crises. And it's not like there's a playbook that exists for uncertainty of this magnitude, which is quite new to everyone. So yeah, we're learning every day, and I wake up every day to a new challenge and opportunity.
Are you seeing anything in the data yet on your forward bookings?
I mean, look, it's difficult. We did see the impact of the changes on US aid. That was immediate, as you know. So
Interesting. Oh, because they come and stay at your hotels?
yeah, we have, as you know, we have operations in Africa and many places where obviously USAID was in place. So we did see those impacts quite rapidly. And then I think today it's a bit more complicated. I think you're seeing a bit more erratic booking patterns across the spectrum, as you would expect. You've got some of the corporate behaviors which are shifting. Companies are the first ones to get really worried about these kind of changes in markets, and so there's a bit more erratic movement on the corporate side. On the leisure side, I wouldn't call it's not as crystal clear. Obviously we've had earthquakes, we've had all kinds of events, and the week after the earthquake, people are asking me about the impact of tariffs, and we just got through the assessment of the earthquake, and the next day, you've got your investor relations and your media guys asking you about, so what about the tariffs? And you're like, come on, guys.
So besides running the daily business as well,
yeah,
the
exactly.
daily
So
and the
it's
weekly and the
a
monthly
marathon
and
at a sprint's pace. But yeah, you're seeing some markets. The pickup in some markets is a bit slower. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't really call it at this point in time, right? We've seen slowdowns, but then frankly, in many of these situations, the slowdown essentially then results in a much higher pickup in the weeks following. And the feeling I get now is that when you start looking at this kind of a rally in the market, a 90-day reprieve, so that buys you 3 months. Essentially, that 3-month window is when you typically get your impact on leisure, right? And in a downturn, right? That's the period. People are booking for the summer. They've booked 3 months out. Now all of a sudden you get a 90-day reprieve on these tariffs, which means it takes you to summer and potentially takes you into fall, right? So does it allow us to navigate the full year on leisure demand? Probably, and hopefully. Hopefully this 90 days extends into a longer reprieve, or at least some degree of negotiation, which boosts consumer confidence and I think probably normalizes the markets. And that's what we're all hoping for. So we're tracking all these indicators, right? We're tracking indicators like consumer confidence index, unemployment, inflation. I think the IMF is coming out with their data in April. So we're going to be really interested to see what their forecasts say. But yeah, I would say that we're not ready to take a haircut on our guidance today. If anything, we will be cautious. We will be cautious on our cost management anyways. I think that's the thing we as an organization have to do preemptively. But we're not going to cut down on anything which is consumer facing. The reality is we want to make sure that our products and experiences are untouched. That's really the mainstay of what Minor competes on, is experiences. And so fundamentally, yeah, we'll be conservative on cost management. Yes, not on consumer-facing costs. And if the forward prospects are good, then you know what, they'll be doubly good for everyone.
And and this is coming off a record year. 2024 was the biggest year for Minor hotels. We in fact skifted a story on it too. And so in terms of the growth, you're about 560 plus hotels. You 800. I think there's the goal you announced at this annual earnings is 800 something by 2027. Where's most of the growth coming from, geographically speaking, and then brand wise?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I think we've said that a significant portion of the growth will come in Asia. I think we have a strong presence, of course, in Europe, but we forecasted, of course, that much of the growth will come in Asia. Some of the announcements we've done recently touch on growth in Japan, touch on growth, obviously, in continued growth in China. India, as you know, is a huge priority.
You just opened this one in Jaipur. It's a gorgeous.
Yeah.
I've seen the videos, the drone videos. They look incredible.
Yeah, it's doing amazingly well. Obviously, it's designed. It's been designed for the wedding business partly, and it's an absolute home run so far. Yeah. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the growth in Europe. Right, one of the reasons that we acquired the NH Group was specifically so that we could actually develop our brands in Europe and vice versa, develop the NH brands here in Asia. And that's been working incredibly well. You can appreciate that the market here, we were positioned more on the luxury and upscale side of the spectrum. The NH portfolio gives us that capacity to go into the upper mid-scale, and upscale part of that spectrum with brands which have a huge appeal and awareness in the European markets. So it's been quite exciting to bring those brands to Europe. The Anantaras there are showing up in all the major gateway cities, all incredibly successful. And we'll talk about it in a minute, I'm sure, but we're really starting to leverage power around loyalty, distribution, to get some direct business. And I think that's something pre-acquisition. I think both organizations were really dependent on third parties to generate a lot of their traffic. And today you can see that shift being tremendously in our favor in terms of building direct rapport with consumers.
Your career, I mentioned at the start, has been at the intersection of marketing and loyalty in airlines, and then at hotels. You were previous to this at Accor, and started this what probably is the biggest retooling of a loyalty program in the hotel industry after maybe Bonvoy, which is Accor Live Limitless Live. I keep confusing ALL, but
Accor lived Limitless, Rafat. Come on.
Limitless Live or Live Limitless, but it certainly was the biggest. And I think I first met you maybe back then, and you were saying, "Oh, it's about to launch," and I think it was 2019 maybe or 2018.
Yeah, it would have been just before COVID, because obviously
COVID,
we launched as COVID was about to show up on everyone's radar screen. Yeah. Obviously the best timing ever for a launch, right?
No, it's not in your control. And so with Minor, the interesting thing, and our common friends at Global Hotel Alliance, you are part of their sort of more umbrella loyalty service, having come from places where I guess the companies owned their own loyalty programs, or at least were managing their own loyalty programs, to this. What has been the rationale behind it, and sort of how have you thought about it since you're an expert at this? I mean, you've been there, almost coming up to 2 years now.
Yeah, coming up to 2 years. And it's funny because even prior to my airline career, I spent a lot of time in Canada, as you know, managing coalition loyalty programs. So I was with a company called Air Miles Reward Program in Canada, running a big coalition. And so my background is data, CRM, and loyalty. And so I've run coalition loyalty programs with multiple partners, and now increasingly multiple owners, including banks. And so it's full circle for me, right? So I started in coalition loyalty early on in my career. I then joined airlines, Air Canada, which of course at the time was dependent on Aeroplan, which was a company they'd spun off, and therefore a third party for them for many, many years. Before then, of course, joining Qatar Airways and Accor, which of course had their own programs. And funnily enough, as you know, Qatar Airways now is operating with Avios as a currency.
Yes.
So you know what? In the loyalty space, like in the hospitality space, and just like in the airline space, things never stay in place very, very long. But the difference is it's a choice, right? I think there's a point in time, and there's an inflection point where your database becomes sizable enough, and data becomes critical enough, and differentiation and personalization become critical enough that ownership is an important part of that decision. And if you look at Global Hotel Alliance, which is composed of some amazing brands. Of course, we have some amazing partners in GHA. You have Capellas of this world, you have the Pan Pacs, you have the Kempinskis, you have Corinthias. I mean, I can keep on going on and on and on and on. It's been tremendously successful. The growth rates of the membership base are through the roof, and a lot of that has to do with people's desire for different experiences, diversity of brands, and it's done something which not many people have done, which is give people choice outside of a standardized ecosystem, which is one of the main reasons, of course, why we joined. We weren't that big at the time, so we needed the scale that GHA was trying to create. We of course we own part of GHA, so it's not only an OPEX relationship, right? It's not purely transactional. And so in that context, when you're an owner of the program, a part owner of the program, and it's a program which accelerates your growth, the stars are kind of aligned. And so, I can say that when you look at balance of trade, which is a very popular term these days, we have a very positive balance of trade internally with our partners.
Because you're probably the biggest part. My guess is you're the biggest, at least volume-wise, as part of GHA. Yeah.
We are, and
Yeah.
we do benefit quite a bit from it, and vice versa, right? Our consumers have a higher degree of affinity, cross brand engagement, and repeat transactions, right? The moment they actually engage with a GHA brand, well, it's I think while it may seem counterintuitive for some, their retention rate with us increases because obviously the relevance of that currency increases, their commitment to the currency increases, their status increases. All these things are obviously natural to you and I. But in the context of an alliance in the loyalty space, no one really knows how that transpires. But I think realistically, we know that our retention rate increases, that the rate of repeat transaction increases, the customer lifetime value increases, and so it just gives you a much wider net to cast into the market.
Are you sort of going into 25 and 26? I'm sure you're already thinking sort of long term because hotel assets, particularly if you own them, you're thinking long term anyway. Um, in terms of loyal, what's the biggest thing you're excited about and the changes that are coming to sort of the loyalty space writ large, beyond hotels and airlines? Now banks have entered into credit cards, are leaning heavily into travel as a way to, but particularly in US, I'm guessing it's the same in Asia as well. Credit cards in India, I know, have open lounges all around. I'm guessing it's the same in other parts of Asia as well. So what excites you the most in loyalty? Just because that happens to be sort of your original love.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think loyalty is it often goes full circle. When I started in loyalty, it was all about it's all about the data. It's still about the data today. And I think there's a lot of experts that have left the industry, right? I mean, the people I used to work with when I was in my early days in loyalty, I mean, they were hardcore. They were people that were changing the world. They created an industry. They knew how it worked inside out. They knew the levers and how it impacted consumer behavior. And I think a lot of those experts have now gone on to do different things, and they've moved into, in some cases, they've moved into the tech space and the Bitcoin space, and they're all over the place. They're in banks, and so all of a sudden, there's a dearth of talent in that space, and you've got people that are functional experts in silos. So what's interesting for me to see is that when I started in loyalty, it was all about data and changing consumer behavior and personalization. And then lo and behold, in 2025, people are talking about hyper personalization. And the reality is no one is hyper personalizing incredibly well, certainly within the travel space. I think the challenge has always been the human contact. How do you scale the data through a human interface? And I think what's really exciting for me is that we're getting to a point now with investments in data and the actual decrease of the cost of those investments. A lot of organizations are actually now developing a data and technology stack, which is super scalable. The moment you actually have that, you can build Gen AI capabilities on top of it. And once you have those Gen AI capabilities, that data, and now you have these different technology tools, like whether they're smartphones or other types of interfaces, whose costs have also come down tremendously. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, you can start leveraging that data at scale, those preferences at scale. And so what consumers have been asking for, which is, you need to know me, you should be leveraging everything I've told you, my behaviors, my price sensitivity, my brand affinity, the type of oil I use during my spas. I mean, I can continue going on and on and on these kind of things. Tell me, what you're recommending. Fundamentally become an Amazon, a human version of Amazon for me. And that's, to me, what's the most exciting, because for a brand that's really focused on that human-centric approach, leveraging loyalty and data to kind of take that human-centric approach further and make that conversation just more relevant, more fluid, less transactional, it's transformational, because I think it can occur at any brand, but particularly for brands like us, which really focus on the experiential aspect, which is, inherently hard to scale. This is it's a gift.
Yeah. And in the scheme of things, you are still a smaller hotel brand. So you're still able to do this, even though you have hundreds and hundreds of hotels. It's still small compared to, say, like Marriott and others. And you still have
And
that.
since we own them, Rafat, right? Since we own them, the capacity to do change management, right? I can't underscore the fact that being asset heavy, or asset right, sorry, allows us to make some of those transformations happen much faster. And so we put our money where their mouth is. If we screw up, that flow through goes all the way down. And if we do well, that flow through essentially also goes all the way down. So, with our partners, we do have a lot of credibility because we bear a lot of the risk ourselves.
There's so many threads that we can pick up, but I want to move to a very hot topic these days, White Lotus. I will admit, I know I've not watched a minute of White Lotus in any of the 3 seasons. I only know what I read on Skift about the White Lotus effect. I had to read up for this interview as well. All I know is I remember it was in Hawaii first year, and people said it's in the hotel industry. You should watch it because it's, I guess, in travel. And I don't know why I didn't watch it. And second season was Italy, and obviously the season in Thailand. And it happens to be hosted almost exclusively at your properties. 4 seasons, the main 4 seasons. 4 seasons has been the main character, I guess, from a hotel perspective from the start. The 4 season in what island is it?
Koh Samui.
Koh Samui is owned by you. And then the Anantaras, as you said, the 3 Anantaras and maybe 4 is where it was filmed. And so, did you? I mean, it's 2 years ago when you joined. Was it known at that point that they're going to film it, or it came later?
It came a bit later. I think it came as we, as I was joining. Obviously, they have a pretty long planning horizon, and I think I think when you for the people who have watched White Lotus, obviously their cinematography is absolutely stunning, and so they constantly pick these locations which are outstanding and have beautiful cinematography and photography value. And so when you look at the filming in Hawaii, obviously stunning landscape. Sicily as well. Now, obviously, they film one hotel in like 3 or 4 different hotels. So I think in some cases in Sicily, people show up at the hotel in question. They're kind of like, "Hey, where's the beach?" And they're kind of like, "Oh no, the beach was actually that was another set, and there's another hotel for this type of restaurant." So it's in some cases it could be a surprise. But I think Thailand was the natural next best option. Obviously, they'd done Europe, they'd done Hawaii. I think Asia was going to be their next location. I think natural location to me. I think Mike White's vision around creating some kind of genuine Asian experience really takes shape incredibly well in Thailand. I mean, you've been to Thailand, you
Yes.
know how immersive it is, right? It's immersive and yet it's not overwhelming. And so that's why I think naturally as they were scouting out these locations. 4 seasons obviously was an incredibly perfect fit for what they were trying to achieve because it was a self-contained resort, filmed incredibly beautifully. It's quite isolated, and then of course the Anantarness was what kind of set us apart, right? You've got elements of local heritage in many of our hotels' designs, and so when you watch the show. It really comes through, right? Whether it's the reception areas, which are filmed in our resort in called Anantara Boput in Samui, or whether it's filmed in Phuket, all those resorts have local heritage at their core, and they're obviously a luxury resort. So there was a real nice complementarity about the 4 seasons plus the Anantara combo.
And I mean, I think you were quoted, or maybe Dilip was quoted, your CEO, in one of the Skift stories a few days ago, or maybe it was a few weeks ago, on ADRs, 30-40% higher ADRs on these.
So they've obviously the ADRs are 30-40% higher. I mean, it's which is great. I mean, it's not a surprise. Obviously, we do see bookings. The bookings spiked the night of the premiere. The booking spiked like almost 200%. It was amazing, and more importantly, we've seen that the direct bookings have gone up 40%. So it's interesting for us because of course you want some of those direct channels to perform very well. The ADR is holding. Now, obviously, we're all keeping our fingers crossed that the uncertainty is kept to a minimum, so that some of those international flows keep on flowing, and that, of course, the foreign exchanges remains quite strong in favor of the U.S. at this point in time.
And the 2 countries where it's the most popular is U.S. and Canada, and you're from Canada, I'm from U.S., and so and we'll see how those flows of tourists from U.S. and Canada, long haul, obviously, probably on the much higher end of the spectrum.
U.S., Canada. I mean, we were hosting a luxury event recently, and surprisingly, there was a lot of excitement in South America. So I would say the Americas in general, UK, Australia, and Thailand by default. Obviously, it's filmed here, so there's a lot of engagement.
Yeah, yeah. And so, as this has been a hit, have you, as a company, thought of like a sustained, I don't know, for lack of a better word, film tourism strategy of sorts?
We have actually. We It's funny because Mother of the Bride, which was I guess a Netflix movie that came out probably a year ago or so, was also filmed in one of our properties. And so on the back of that filming, we've actually developed a specific strategy to appeal to production houses in the early and late stages, because obviously when Netflix or whomever create a show, there's a conception of the show, there's a scouting, and then of course there's a local production. And so we've really started allocating resources at every single stage of that process. In the key places where it makes sense. Obviously, in Thailand, there's a ton of filming, there's a ton of incentives in Thailand. So we actually have dedicated teams that are really focused on ensuring that we secure that business as it comes in locally, and God knows that there's tons of that. The key for us is to do exactly the same in Europe and probably in the Middle East. Now, obviously, the incentives are different, so we allocate resources according to the incentives and the actual size of those markets.
In terms of sort of geographic, either countries or areas, I'm just going to name some and give me some sense of how you're thinking about those. So, India, you're still small in India?
We're small in terms of hotel presence, for sure. As you know,
Yeah.
we have Jaipur, but our India right now is our fourth biggest emitting market, which is huge in Asia, Middle East, and Africa. So it's gone up consistently. It's like probably the highest growth rate emitting country we have. So yeah, India, huge emitting. I think there's good recognition of our brands in India. Obviously, our model today is we haven't approached the model from a joint venture perspective. We're approaching the market more from a management perspective, but the reality is, I think we have to think about the market differently. But before approaching it differently, we want to make sure we have a couple of wins that we can point to, and that's been our focus. We want to make sure that we're very proud with our footprint there, and we've tripled the size of our teams there. We now have an office in India. So you'll see a lot coming out of India in the next coming months.
Middle East, obviously, tons of activity in Saudi, but Dubai obviously is a very high growth, continues to be high growth market. Abu Dhabi, others, Qatar, other countries in the region. What's your sense of where the market is, both as where you are developing hotels, opening hotels, and two, as like a source market?
Look, the source markets. We've taken a pretty serious look at our source markets, and consciously started diversifying away from the more traditional markets. I mean, historically, everyone pointed, to U.S., U.K., Germany as the key markets you had to secure. And they're still great markets. Don't get me wrong, but the reality is, and everyone, you remember this. Everyone said, "Oh yeah, get the volume out of China when your prices are low. They don't give you as much total RevPAR. So and so in high peaks, go for the prime countries, and then in low periods, go for the Chinas and the Indias." And I think the reality is that's changing. I spend a lot of time in China, in the luxury space in China, and frankly, all you have to do is go to Qasr Al Sarab, right in the middle of the desert, in the empty quarter of Abu Dhabi. And I mean, there's a huge base of Chinese travelers there that are huge consumers of experiences. So although they might be softer on things like F&B, because obviously not all F&B is tailored to the Chinese consumer, they massively overspend on experiences. And so the reality is, I think a lot of people have misunderstood how to optimize some of the demand that's coming in from some of these markets. But when you know how that demand takes shape and how those ancillaries are realized differently, I think it makes those markets as strong as some of the traditional markets, of the Western economies. And so we've certainly been refocusing on China, on India from an emitting market perspective. The Middle East has been a massively strong emitting market for us, and continues to be strong, particularly as the wellness and health industries develop in Southeast Asia. So that corridor has been very lucrative and continues to be so. So, I think that diversification serves us extremely well. Because at the end of the day, our goal is obviously to optimize the performance of the company, but it's also to make it more resilient to shocks. And so that's been our strategy, not only globally, but it's also been our strategy in markets like the Maldives, where historically you might have taken a ton of traffic out of India. We saw what happened through some of the geopolitics
last
there.
year,
It was not that pleasant. But the good news is that we had such a good diversification there, and the impact was marginal.
Mm-hmm. Couple of other markets. So China, what's your presence in China?
In China, we have 8 hotels, I
Okay,
think, and don't quote me on this one. There's always plus or minus a few.
so
Um,
yeah,
Still
small presence
small,
for now. Yeah,
still small, massive emitting market in China, and so we do have a joint venture there with Funyard. And Dane will correct me on how many hotels we have in China in a second, I'm sure. But obviously we're probably more than 8 hotels to be honest with you. But certainly we have big hotels in China. We have convention hotels in China. We have a number of new developments underway. We have beautiful hotels in the mountain resorts out there that are being built. I mean, they're going to be some of the most stunning anantaras that you've ever seen. But China's been a great market for us. I mean, obviously, everyone said that China isn't recovering as fast as China should be recovering, and there's been protectionism of their tourism industry.
yeah. But Southeast Asia is just, but both the geographical and the cultural closeness definitely helps for Southeast Asia, where a
Yeah,
big part of your business is.
but even in
Um,
Europe, right, we're seeing the boost in Europe now finally coming back. So we're still, the NH Group is seeing massive increases in Chinese tourism. The challenge is that it's erratic. We all know that there's open and closures there. They're trying to retain some of their tourist business intra-China, which is normal. I think many countries are trying to do that. Frankly, let's be honest. Europe for Europe has been a big thing through COVID. Asia for Asia was a massive thing for the region as well. But I think China is really the luxury market in China is transforming. You've got younger consumers, that are incredibly disruptive.
Global habits versus only wanting Chinese food, or yeah.
I think it's a brilliant market, very exciting, and digitally, I think it's the leading market in the world. The stuff they're doing
I
out
mean, at
there.
this point, it really is. The do you so U.S. has been a very minor part, I guess. Sorry, that was
Yep.
not the pun I was trying to go for. But you have one in New York, right? I think one in
Yeah,
New York.
one in New York. Yeah, we have an NH collection in New York on Madison.
In New York, yeah. Um, does it matter?
It matters. The U.S. market matters. Obviously, you can't say the U.S. market doesn't matter, right? I think we all know that we're not going to go into the U.S. and compete with Marriott and Hilton head on. I mean, obviously, that's something that Sebastian Etacore said for years. He's been very clear about it. We're obviously smaller. And so, yeah, our positioning is a niche positioning. We're looking at AAA cities where we have natural flows from our network. New York is obviously a natural gateway for Europe and for the NH Group, and certainly for Asia and our database here. So you can imagine that AAA gateway cities are our focus. We're really focused on niche opportunities, luxury opportunities, and so at the end of the day, we all know that we're not going to win on corporate in the U.S. I mean, that's locked down solid. So where you can win is on leisure, niche, really experience-driven products. And in some cases, yeah, when the gateway cities, maybe you have an opportunity to kind of have a bit of an opportunity that extends beyond that positioning. But we're being very surgical in the U.S., like everyone is. But the U.S. is such a big market for us, right? It still remains a big market for us. Our brands need to be known in the U.S. We spend a lot of time with the guys at Chase, Virtuoso, Amex, making sure that our brands are top of mind. But having a couple of properties that would really resonate with the market would be key. Same thing in China, same thing in India. In some cases, you don't need to have 1,000 properties, right? You might need to have 10, but 10 fantastic properties that really resonate with the consumer base and allow you to essentially leverage the scale of that market.
Interesting. Yeah, it's just they're so good that people then want to stay in where you have more concentration in. So that, yeah, that's fascinating. In in terms of Shifting, I know you talked a little about Gen AI before. Let me ask you this question. How has your daily work life changed in the last year because of, for instance, I don't know what you use, ChatGPT or whatever else you use? Has it changed?
It has, for sure. It's changed. Of course, it's an evolution, right? I think Gen AI is transformative to many people, and there's no doubt that it will have a massive impact on how we work in the future. We're seeing our copywriting department obviously is utilizing at scale, right? I've got Dane here in my office, obviously, which by the way is an incredible part of our team. But he obviously utilizes ChatGPT to kind of multiply by two or three the amount of work he does on a daily basis, whether it's in copywriting, whether it's in revising and getting abstracts of content out there. It's really increased the productivity of numerous teams. Other aspects are things like queue management, and so some of the AI applications outside of Gen AI, but the AI applications in managing customer complaints or incoming calls and optimizing who gets what. That's having a direct impact on not only the productivity of contact centers and people that are managing quality and complaints. It's essentially increasing the satisfaction of consumers. And then, of course, as we're integrating most of our consumer-facing technology, our apps, and all of our digital assets, that's where the game is being played, right? We're harmonizing all of our data. That's what we're doing probably in the next 6 months. We're going to have one data stack across the company. And once we've done that, then you can actually start leveraging AI and Gen AI capabilities at scale. So whatever we learn here or whatever use case is really beneficial in Asia can overnight or in real time be transferred over to Australia, the Middle East, or Europe. And I think that's where the magic's going to happen. I think a lot of companies are still struggling with their data. They've got data everywhere. They've got old infrastructure, legacy infrastructures. They're migrating things to the cloud. Or in our case, because we've only done few acquisitions, our integration is actually a lot more moderate than most. And so we want to leverage that position to start building up capabilities around AI more rapidly. So you'll start seeing a lot of those capabilities show up. Probably, I don't want to overpromise here, but certainly in the next 12 to 18 months, you'll start seeing some of those capabilities embedded in our app and embedded in front desks for sure.
And are you in the build or buy mode in terms of technology there?
Oh, at this point, you know what? We are in buy mode. The reality is we are not a tech company. We will never be a tech company. I think when you look at the software as a service landscape, I think it's wonderful. I think it eliminates so much complexity. I think the native integrations that are occurring between some of the major platforms are a godsend because they eliminate this integration necessity on our side. Historically, even if you bought stuff, you had to integrate it. And then there was a change in version, and then you had to work on integration and reintegration and all those kind of things. And so these native integrations between software as a service providers allow these guys to work on all the back end themselves. And guess what? I can deploy all my resources on doing more with less and really focusing on some of the strategic work that they need to do.
Couple of more questions. You touched upon sort of the distribution, and AI will come into that in a big way, in ways that we probably don't even know today. In the next, for all I know, in the next 6 months to a year, but also obviously continue to change. The direct versus OTA battle. I don't know if this battle will ever end, and I don't know if it's a battle because both need each other in different ways. Is your life on that end different at Minor than it was at Accor?
No, I would say the reality is, as long, and it's not, it's not a, I'm not stating this to make an inflammatory statement. The reality is, it's the economics, right? Fundamentally, the economics of indirect distribution, without even naming OTAs, right? I mean, we can talk about wholesale as well, Rafat. I mean, the reality is, there's a pretty different world in Asia and than there is in Europe. Right? Wholesale static, it's just not a thing, right? In Europe. I mean, how many people do you know talking about static distribution in Europe? Very, very few. And so for us, it's pretty simple. There's a migration of wholesale into retail. In retail, obviously, you've got your OTAs and then you've got your direct. And so the reality is your yield improves when you actually move up those steps up the pyramid. And so for us, it's exactly that. It's not a battle for OTA share per se. It's a battle for the most profitable share of the consumer portfolio. We're targeting people that are increasingly coming through our retail channels. We don't want to lose our wholesale volume, but we know that obviously the margins there are lower. And so whatever we can shift into retail is great. And everyone wins. OTAs win, we win, everyone wins in that game. Eventually, we'll start having more and more wholesale dynamic, which allows us, of course, to keep on growing our margin. But on the OTA side, of course, I think we've been overly dependent as an organization. We've been smaller, so we've needed indirect distribution for years. And so we've been very thankful of the relationship with those guys. But what you're having, the main phenomenon we're having now is, yeah, of course, we're shifting volume from OTAs because it works for everyone. It works for us as an owner, and it works for our partners. But we're never going to lose those guys. We don't want to lose them because they bring a huge amount of infrequent traffic that we need. But when you look at a market like China, where they're no longer talking. You talk to Fliggy or you talk to Alibaba Group, they're not talking about OTA status. They're qualifying themselves as online travel platforms. Part of that platform is through their flagship stores and those kind of models, more direct. And part of that platform is their OTA model. So they've actually found a way to kind of operate on both worlds. And so it's going to be really interesting because, as the market evolves, surely more and more players will kind of, gravitate towards that world, particularly if you want loyalty to have a role in that conversation. If you don't, that's fine, but then it becomes a commodity play.
Right, then it becomes a commodity play. Yeah. So you're saying that Omri of Agoda, who's in your town, you and him will be on stage at the Skift Asia Forum, and we'll have some fireworks.
No, I wouldn't say fireworks. I think it's a nice it's positive friction. I think that's where we all win.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, so it's this in about 5 weeks, I'll be in your town, in Bangkok, along with a bunch of Skift folks and hopefully hundreds of attendees. And our first Skift Asia Forum. We had Skift Asia Forum in Singapore pre-COVID, but the world is so different now that I really just count this as the first one. We briefly talked about the idea at Skift Global Forum last year, and it moved so quickly, and you guys were so on the ball. So we really appreciate that part. And we're hosting it at Avani Riverside in Bangkok, our Skift Asia Forum. Some great speakers, including your CEO. You were there, a bunch of other CEOs and top executives in the travel industry. And if you know Skift, it's sort of a eclectic view of all of what's happening in the travel industry, in this case in Asia, but also other parts of the world as well. So that's coming. The uncertainty, I'm guessing, will be the biggest theme. Or maybe it's a little, as you said, the August pause until August may help. Hopefully, should help.
Well, you know what? I think the uncertainty has to be a topic, right? I mean, all of us. I think none of us believe that this will be an end. I think this is a pause. So I think it gives everyone a bit of room to breathe and to plan. So I certainly think that will be a topic. And obviously, I think I don't want to forget. I want to thank you, obviously, Rafat, for your trust. I think it started in a conversation in New York. I think it did happen pretty fast, but you guys have been pretty amazing. I think it's been a real collaboration on organizing this event, and we're just super thrilled to have you guys and the whole industry join us.
And when you dig into it, actually, Bangkok is quite a hub of a lot of things in travel beyond just Minor and Agoda. There's Travelier Group, which is a transport unicorn. There's obviously Thai tourism, Thai Airways, etc. Bunch of that stuff. But it's actually quite a big hub. Singapore obviously being, I guess, a regional Southeast Asia hub, but Bangkok is becoming a hub, and that was one of the things that we bet on. And you said, bring it here. You'll be surprised at how people love coming to Bangkok. Well, that was not a surprise. That I knew. But in terms of a lot of stuff happening and the fact that there's so much volume on all ends of the market that allows you to experiment. One of the things I've been saying from the start of Skift is Southeast Asia is where the future of travel will be tested. Meaning any new technology that comes is such a dense, at least in the cities, the main cities, is so dense and they're so digitally wired that it'll be tested. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, it's from somebody who comes from Canada and France, it's pretty traditional, right? You still have your debit cards and you're walking around. And okay, now we had Apple Pay and we're all very excited.
Yes.
And you come here and of course you've got QR payment across the board. Everyone's got a mobile phone. Everyone's got apps for everything. Super apps, mini apps, God knows what, apps in an app. I mean, it's mind blowing. And so you're right. I mean, you look at payment tech. We have a dedicated department that's focused only on payment tech here because it's such a fundamentally critical thing.
Tons of stuff happening there.
So I think people should visit Bangkok, obviously, but I think if they have an opportunity to experience not only the hospitality side and the food side, which is super vibrant, but if they have a chance to experience with how digital is delivered in Southeast Asia, I think you have to do it because it's eye-opening.
It really is. Well, Ian, we could continue talking for hours, but we'll do that when we come to Bangkok. And you and I are probably going, or at least a few of us are going to go to one of your favorite restaurants, whatever it is. It might be owned by Minor for all you know, the other part of Minor.
Maybe.
Yeah. What people don't know is Minor International, under which Minor Hotels falls, is also the owner of probably the most number of restaurants in the world, probably, if not, certainly Asia. But also probably.
Yeah, we're not going to compete with the McDonald's and the Starbucks of this world, but we have thousands of restaurants under Minor Food. Obviously, Minor Food was our biggest division for years, right? I mean, Bill's company grew through pizza, right? I mean, if you read his book, right, his first big play was in the pizza world, and how he essentially converted from a franchise that we will remain nameless over to the pizza company and built up the biggest pizza organization in Asia. And from that point on, of course, has built a number of other incredibly successful other brands. So, we're brand builders, right? We like to build our own brands. We like to control our ecosystems. And I think hospitality is just a natural extension of that.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Okay. All right, Ian, thank you for that. And I'll see you in 5 weeks. And
absolutely,
people should definitely keep an eye out for all the moves that Minor is making, all the major moves that Minor is making.
Thanks a lot, Rafat. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Thank you for listening to the Skift Travel Podcast. Wherever you're listening, please make sure to subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, rate us 5 stars or leave us a positive review. It really helps get the word out about us, our podcast, and make sure that we can still continue to bring it to you free of charge every week.
If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell as well. That way you'll know every time we have a new episode.